Good evening, welcome along. So breaking tonight, exclusive bombshell polling has revealed that the Prime Minister is massively out of touch with the British public when it comes to the grooming gang scandal. Do you remember this?
Politicians who sat in government for many years, calling for inquiries because they want to jump on a bandwagon of the far right.
So we can reveal now in exclusive polling that just 18% of Brits agree with Starmer's remarks. 64% say instead that those calling for a national inquiry are motivated by getting justice for the victims. So they're not motivated by jumping on a far-right bandwagon. 64% of you think that you are motivated by justice. The polling, carried out by JL Partners and Friderichs Advisory, found that the grooming gang scandal is widely seen as a cover-up, actually, including by Labour voters. So 46% of people surveyed say that they think the scandal was actually exacerbated by a cover-up. 14%, that's 1-4, disagree. There is widespread support for the deportation of dual nationals found guilty of raping children. So I'll just emphasise that again, because I appreciate how it's a strong sentence, isn't it? There is widespread support for the deportation of dual nationals found guilty of raping children. 3 in 4 people back deportation, including 68% of Labour voters. And the public's choice to solve the grooming gang scandal, it was asked who is the country's most popular politician. Are you ready? It turns out it's Nigel Farage of the Reform Party. So there we go. More than 1 in 5 Brits choose Reform as the party that they trust most to handle specifically the grooming gang issue, the rape gang issue, followed by Labour and then the Tories. That's interesting in itself, though, to be fair, isn't it? So you've got Reform, fine, but actually the second choice there is Labour, so interesting. The polling also found that Nigel Farage is the most positively viewed politician in Britain. So when you are actually asked about who is genuinely, pretty much anyway, the most popular politician in Britain, it turns out it is apparently Nigel Farage. I'm joined now by the man behind the polling, who is no doubt going to correct me if I've got anything wrong here. It's James Johnson. James, thank you very much. Great to have you on. OK, I think one of the most interesting things there is that... Is it fair to say that Nigel Farage is the most popular politician in Britain?
It is. He is the most positively viewed. That means he's got more people saying they've got a good view of him than Kenny Badenoch, than Keir Starmer, and Ed Davey. Now, he does have a lot of people saying they don't like him, but actually those figures are lower than, for example, the Labour leader. So when you're just looking at that percentage you say positive, he's in front of the rest.
One thing I thought was absolutely insane, actually, was as I was reading this out. So when it comes to support for the deportation of dual nationals who are found guilty of raping children. That's a very specific question, isn't it? Right? Only 3 in 4 people back that. But anyway, so 68% of Labour voters there, which raises questions, doesn't it? Because we've got people like, for example, Quarry Ralph, who's out and about in Rochdale, scheduled for deportation 11 years ago. We apparently can't get rid of him. He works as a takeaway delivery driver. So 68% of Labour voters would back deporting dual nationals if they're convicted of, well, you said raping children. In reality, in this context, it's a grooming gang issue, isn't it, I think?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think this echoes something that we've seen in the poll in question after question, that there is a big divide between the Labour parliamentary position and the Labour leadership's position, and where Labour voters are. Labour voters are pretty much in line with Conservative voters, Reform voters, the rest of the public on this issue. They think that people involved in this scandal need to be locked up. They think that those who are dual nationals need to be deported. They think that the grooming gang scandal overall has been a cover-up. So Labour voters are not extreme on this issue at all. They're in line with the public as a whole. Another interesting thing on that, Patrick, is that we also see the same with non-white voters. This is a universal, consensus-driven view.
Could you go into that? Sorry, for me. Would you mind doing this? Sorry. So go on. Elaborate on that then. So you're seeing a similar result when it comes to. It doesn't matter about race or ethnicity. It's just basically most people in Britain have a standard view, which is that if you are a member of a grooming gang, and we can deport you, we probably should.
Absolutely. A majority of every group in the country, non-white, white, young, old, Labour, Reform, Lib Dem, agree with that statement, or say they support deportation in those circumstances. So, look, if you went on Twitter or X or whatever, Patrick, you'd think this was a polarised discussion. And I've seen people in the last couple of weeks saying, we need to be careful about the division this causes. We've got people, as you played the clip, Keir Starmer saying this is jumping on the bandwagon. Actually, this is not a polarised issue in the country at all. This is something where pretty much everyone is aligned on it. Actually, in the poll, the non-white voter split I mentioned, they're actually some of the toughest on this issue in the public. We asked people what should happen to the people who've raped children as part of this scandal. 30% of the public overall said the death penalty. That was the most popular choice of non-white voters in the poll.
I can believe that. I can absolutely believe that. It's purely anecdotal. But people that I come into contact with who live here, obviously, who are non-white, I can absolutely believe that. Pro-death penalty for this kind of stuff, 100%. Look, thank you very much. Thank you for doing the poll. Great stuff. Really enlightening and really, really interesting as well. And actually quite important. I think you hit the nail on the head there. For all this talk about, if you just went on X or whatever. Well, this is the reality, isn't it? So thank you very, very much. Great to have you on the show. Let's whiz over, shall we, to digest all of this with the Director of Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood. We also have the Conservative MP for Tatton, Esther McVeigh, and broadcaster extraordinaire, Nina Mishka. Mark, what do you make of that? You're a numbers guy. What do you make of that then? So it appears pretty black and white that the vast majority of the public are in favour of an inquiry. They think there's been a cover-up. And actually, it turns out that quite a lot of people are in favour of the death penalty for people who do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, what's fascinating, we heard that just at the end of the interview with the pollster there, Britain isn't a particularly divided nation. Or if there is a division, it's between the people of Britain and the political establishment. That's the main division, right across all parties, all ethnic minorities, men, women. There's a pretty universal state of affairs here. And I was digging into some of the numbers also. I mean, the lack of trust, not just in politicians, but only 14% have a great deal of trust in the BBC. Only 8% have a great deal of trust in newspapers. Only 11% have a great deal of trust in social media. So trust is breaking down for all real established institutions. And you know what? The reason I'm unsurprised about this has been that the Labour MP for Rotherham, Sarah Champion, and the Labour MP for Rochdale, Paul Waugh, have both now changed their mind on the national inquiry. And I can only put that down to their mailbag must have reflected what you have seen in this poll.
They went home on Friday.
And the only other thing I would say is I'm in favour of a national inquiry, we should do it, but sometimes that can kick things into the long grass. I would say what you're seeing from this fieldwork, from this data, is people want justice to be done. And if a national inquiry is a prerequisite for that, if we need to go through a national inquiry to get to the bottom of it, so be it. But people who covered up or looked the wrong way have to be held to account.
It's also, to be honest with you, it's pretty black and white, Esther, isn't it? I mean, is this an indication, do you think, that Keir Starmer's got all of these concerns about, you're jumping on the far-right bandwagon? He's actually just talking to quite a small group of metropolitan elites who live around the Islington area. When you just get out and about, I mean, I don't think that the bloke from JL Pollsters we had on there was a member of the far-right. He didn't sound like it, he just did a poll, right? And the results are there. So actually, maybe Starmer needs to get out more.
Yeah, well, I think you said it at the start, totally out of touch. I mean, when I read these polling results, I went, absolutely, I agreed all of it. To me, it was the obvious. It was the blinding obvious, all of these results. That's exactly what I thought. In fact, I thought it was to such a degree that we all knew these answers, and it was like we think the government is gaslighting us, telling us something different, so we now need to go to polling to prove we're right. That's how much I thought it was right.
Can I just put this to you, though, Esther? Sorry to interrupt, but it is important. I was quite surprised at this result there. That in that polling there, apparently they trust Reform, then Labour, then the Tories to sort it out. Now, I was quite surprised at that. That must be a concern.
Well, I'll
as a
tell you
Tory?
what it is. People have said, well, did the Tories do enough? So there'll be a measurement on that. What have you done? Why haven't you done it? There will be an element of, I didn't quite get why Labour's was so high, if I'm being honest. But in a way, Reform have nothing to prove. They haven't done anything yet. So they can talk about things and people say, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But you see, the cover-up, I thought, was a very interesting word there, because that is precisely what it was. Because I think it would be devastating for Labour, and that's why they're not doing anything. This happened in Labour seats. And so if we dug into who didn't do anything, who overlooked things, it will have a devastating impact. And that's why when Anne Cryer came out as a Labour MP, she was a brave woman, the first woman to do it, because she knew hell was going to be unleashed on her.
Nina, what do you make of those results then? Because if I was Keir Starmer looking at that, I'd be thinking, goodness gracious, why didn't I just do a bloody inquiry, you know?
Well, we know why he hasn't done an inquiry, because, as Mark said, it can go on for years, costs a fortune, and then nobody's accountable at the end. And what he is concerned with is putting in place the recommendations that were not put in place by your mob, 22 recommendations, and they're starting with the first 2. And that seems to be most important. And if you look at all the dreadful inquiries in the past, Hillsborough, how long did that take? 30 years. Who came to justice? Grenfell, the tainted blood scandal, the post office scandal. Nobody's been who and who
just
hang on a minute.
I get what you mean. I absolutely get what you mean, that we have had a procession of how do I phrase this without swearing? Awful long-winded.
Yes,
and
we haven't done a good one yet.
But can't we just do this one?
Well, how?
Is that a reason to not do one?
No, absolutely not. I was going to say, and also you said Mark's a figures man. I'm looking at these figures here, and you say just over 1 in 5 choose Reform. 23% choose Reform, Labour on 22, Conservatives on 16. So if you add up 22 and 16, that 38% prefer Conservatives and Labour over Reform.
Nobody's got any faith in the political establishment. But I'm right with you, Patrick. I think the argument against a national inquiry being that we have not typically done inquiries in a well and timely fashion in the past is not a good argument. It needs to be time limited. I can remember ringing in my ears when I was taking some careers advice as a young man. My university tutor said, well, you can either be an academic, and an academic means you spend an infinite amount of time looking for the best possible answer, or you can be a management consultant, which means you have a set period of time and you find the best answer you can within that set period of time. And our inquiries have got to be, in future, much more like management consultancy and much less like academic.
Obviously,
But
So you need to say it's going to be 6 months, 9 months, whatever, and we're going to do the best we can in that period.
There is a national inquiry into this. Philip, for years, had tried to get Bradford to do an inquiry, of which they refused. He was the MP for Shipley, and he worked with Anne Cryer, who was in Keighley, and Bradford have refused to do it. In fact, if you look at the interview on GB News that we did with Rishi Sunak in 2020, what he was going to do, and hence he brought the task force in, and which 500 people were arrested. But the reason you need a national one is nobody knew how big it was, and equally you can't have councils marking their own homework.
There's stuff that comes out, right? So when you actually look at it, there's astonishing detail that when I read this, as a journalist, when I first read this, which was only last week, I was like, how the heck did I miss this at the time? But it's because there's a title where one of the girls was 15 years old. She was arrested and charged, with soliciting prostitution. And the magistrate who judged her case was the bloke who prostituted her. And you look at this and you think, do we not actually need an inquiry? That is mad, right? But presumably, I don't know, that guy might still have a job. This is the stuff that actually we need an inquiry into. And I don't see why we should not have an inquiry. Nina, can I just move it on slightly?
Yes.
How do you feel when you discover that Nigel Farage is the most popular politician in Britain?
I'm not at all surprised. He's never had to prove himself. He's a brilliant communicator. He is the best politician of our generation. He's that man of the people thing. He was very smart in going into the jungle. People say, "Oh, look, he's a bit of a decent bloke. Look, he's keeping the fire going." It's brilliant. All of that. It's quite obvious, and he has never had to prove himself.
Well, he's captured the zeitgeist to some extent.
He's beyond the zeitgeist.
Yes, you're right, actually. He's very good at predicting where opinion's going to go in the year ahead. He's never actually running to catch up. Although I haven't dug into all the numbers, I'm not sure he is the most popular politician in Britain. I think he's the least unpopular politician in Britain.
Right,
which is the same thing. The politicians as a whole, even I think including Farage, has a negative rating overall, if you'd say how many people like him and how many don't. He's just top of the polls, but he's remarkable owing to the flatness of the surrounding landscape.
Not to be, a nightmare, I am getting this fed into my ear, Mark. So apparently, Nigel Farage has got a plus 32% positivity rating.
Yes, of course, because the thing is...
That's what I'm being told. So someone's getting... No, you're not really. But someone's getting sacked, so that's not true. So apparently that's what it is. So it's got... As a Tory, in full disclosure, I'm from Tasmania. You are my mum and dad's MP, and they speak very highly of you, so it's great stuff. But, the reform thing must be a bit of a nightmare for you, really, because it's like, they are there, aren't they?
Yeah, they are there, and he's a wonderful showman. And I like Farage. I think Farage is a Conservative, if I'm being honest. I think the Conservatives just need to get on with being more Conservative. They need to get on with repairing themselves, getting trust back, getting their policies, getting where they're going, and not be concerned with other people. But do I think Farage is a great politician? Of course he is, and is he a showman? Absolutely.
And on that, Maggie, when you were saying... sorry, not Maggie, Nina, sorry. When you were saying about how, he gets things right, he predicts things. Where is the line there between actually... Maybe he's just brilliant at what he does?
He is brilliant.
Look, if you
he is.
He gets things right all the time. Hang on a minute.
No, he is. He is.
A lot of goals.
He is brilliant at what, and therefore that makes him the most dangerous man in politics in this country.
Oh, great.
There's a braveness there that he's not thinking, if I do this wrong, what will happen? And so many times, once you have been in a position and you have had a ministerial role, you're always wondering what the attack is. So you actually go slightly timid when you should have gone full throttle.
The more people loathe Keir Starmer, the more they're looking for an alternative. So Keir Starmer goes down, and Farage, as I said, who has not had to prove himself, but says all the right things.
Farage is mopping up the process vote, you might say, but there's a hell of a lot in Britain to protest about. That might be enough to win an election.
Keir being so awful is a great counterbalance to Farage.
OK, right. Well, I think I now probably have to say that if Keir Starmer was here, he'd probably say he was doing a great job.